Okay, good afternoon, everyone. I'm going to call the General Purposes Committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Discussion, all those in favor, opposed, carried. And then we have the Bowling Green Community Activity Center, terms of reference, et cetera, for their art. Liliana, anything to add to your report?
Nothing to add to my report, Mr. Chair.
All right.
Move the recommendation.
So that's moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. Public notice bylaw. Madam Clerk, since we have no printed Richmond news anymore,
Nothing further to add, but available to answer any questions.
Move the recommendation.
so that's moved and seconded. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Given that we no longer have delivery to households of the Richmond News as of the 30th of November, I'm wondering if this wouldn't be a good time to increase the area in which we send notices for changes. Like, right now, I think it's 100 meters. And I mean, what would it take for us to change that to, say, 500 meters so that people in the area know what's happening with the redevelopment?
Through the Chair to Councillor Day, this particular report is related to the posting of statutory notices only. It does not influence or impact our current distribution for public hearings and development permit panel meetings, which is 100-meter radius. So it's not related to that at all. It's a separate
So then,
requirement, yes.
I guess bring this to, potentially to planning committee. Okay, thank you.
Actually, yeah, planning committee would be the place. Though I would reflect on the incremental cost of that would be quite significant. Councillor Wolf.
Blinking green, there it is. Yeah, just a quick question. It does say in the report that other municipalities have, with local newspapers that recently transitioned, have adopted similar approaches. Is there any that are quite different, like approaches that other municipalities took?
Through the Chair to Councillor Wolf, so currently there's only a few municipalities that have had to transition to digital publications, the Coquitlam, Port Moody, Port Coquitlam, and two of those are very similar to what we're proposing, which would be posting on the city's website and Facebook. The only variation in those three, and Burnaby as well, is one of them, as their secondary, has an email subscription service. So posting on website and email subscription service, but our proposed approaches mirrors what the other municipalities, those that have had to transition.
Okay, thank you. Just to follow up through the chair then, would our subscription system potentially be like Let's Talk? So people who've signed up to Let's Talk Richmond, they get the update when there's a new Let's Talk. So they could it be something like that?
Through the Chair to Councillor Wolf, so currently are the proposed bylaws proposing posting on the website and the city's Facebook page. And then we're also proposing as next steps to look into other publication means, such as an email subscription service, which could be Let's Talk Richmond, and or an online newsletter. We just require a bit more time to evaluate those particular means and then report back to council.
Okay, then I would like to make an amendment that we, because there's going to be a little bit of process here to get, like we're going to go through the Vancouver Sun in the province till we get to the new system, that in the meantime, we also advertise to those in the Let's Talk Richmond network so that we can also just do our due diligence and beyond to let people know that there's ways to contribute. So I'd like to see if we can add that direction.
The amendment would be to add that. The first two are talking about the bylaw. This one would be general direction to add those. Is there a seconder for that? Oh, Councillor, our lawyer, Tony, you want to address that?
Yes, Your Worship, if I may. I think it's important to note that we're looking to satisfy the statutory requirements. What Councillor Wolf proposes is something that would be used to later augment, but not for the purposes of satisfying the statutory requirements. The danger of having too many different types of mediums of communication is that if there is a glitch in any one of those, you nullify the potential outcome of the purpose of that proceeding. So my advice would be to stick to the very limited notices that are set out in the current form of the bylaw. And if council wishes, then staff can be directed to provide additional communication, not for the purposes of satisfying the statutory requirements, but simply as a best practice.
I'd like to rescind my amendment then and also make a different amendment so that as staff are looking into the other method of communicating, that we also look into some form of membership, newsletter, or Let's Talk Richmond edition.
Are you talking about for the notices that we're going to be giving under this regulation? under this
Exactly.
policy?
So what used to be in the ad in the Richmond News would just be a PDF file sent to the emails. So to have staff look into that, not to start to do it.
Well, just a minute. I think we should do 1 and 2, and I'll come back to you. And it sounds like what we need is a referral to staff to give us options for further dissemination of pertinent information from the city, that kind of thing. So I'll come back to you on that. Okay. So I'm going to call the question on 1 and 2. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. And so, Councillor Wolf, how would that be? We do a referral to staff to consider options for further dissemination of city-related notices and business, something like that.
Yes, if, for example, through Let's Talk, but I already see it in the report under next steps, like they're already going to be looking into this transition to digital publication. I would just make the referral to potentially include some form of newsletter.
Okay, well, that would be under options.
Okay.
All right, so that's moved. Is it seconded? Okay, okay. So it's moved and seconded. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. So the third item is the naloxone kits in civic buildings. We'll go to Councillor Heed. Do you want to introduce this?
Yeah, I'm not going to go through a long background on it. I think a lot of work has been done on this. A lot of time has been spent talking about it. I'm hoping we can get to the question right away. So I'm just going to put the motion forward that naloxone kits are made available for the public to access at all Richmond civic buildings, including the Richmond Olympic Oval, and that procedures for access are developed along the lines of access to automated external defibrillators.
Just a minute. Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, I have a question, probably if staff or comment, if I would, I'm going to support this, no problem with it at all. The procedures for access to being developed, staff, maybe we could have a memo on what are the procedures right now. If I walked in a community center and looked at a defibrillator, for example, I wouldn't know. So I'm wondering whether in terms of the procedures and how we'll get those in public, like who knows how to run a defibrillator there? Where is it? Is there more than one? And then what signage would we have for the public for help? And I would also think that we would probably have a comment that there are trained people here.
Yeah.
That would there be one at the front end and one at the second floor, whatever. So that kind of thing, Your Worship, I think it could be done in a memo.
I'm going to suggest this.
Add one.
This motion talks about there's going to be procedures for access, et cetera, made available. Let's get through the program, get it implemented. We'll ask staff then to advise us as to what the procedures are, what's the status, and just, kind of finish it off.
Yeah, okay.
All right, Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. Just a quick question, that the kits are made available for the public for free? Is that a friendly? Yeah. Do we need to put that in there, or?
I don't think, they're going to be made available, period. They're not going to be asking for your Visa card when you ask for a naloxone kit.
Okay.
So I think that's implied, is it not,
It's implied.
Counselor?
Okay, good.
All right, Counselor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a couple of points first. Doing a little investigation, here's an naloxone kit right here. My previous one was expired, so I picked up a new one at Shoppers for free. You don't have to give information, you just ask for it. And so I learned that over the winter, you're recommended not to keep this in your vehicle. That's where I was previously keeping mine, especially if it gets to below 0 degrees, which it likely will here again soon. So my question is going to be around where we would keep these, because an AED box, typically 49 or so of them in the city are on the external side of a building, where it does get exposed to extreme cold, maybe not extreme heat. Maybe we place them so they're not on the sunny side of the building, but so my question is, where would we keep these? And also the fact that we have kind of a 2-year shelf life for these, where the AEDs are about 10 to 15-year shelf life. So
Can
perhaps we could
staff-
keep these at the front counter inside.
Can staff comment on that? I assume that's part of the whole program.
Through the mayor to Councillor Wolf, yes, all of these considerations will be detailed in our program administration plan. We currently have 45 AEDs inside city buildings within the city. Our occupational health and safety team reviewed the temperatures and were advised that the nasal kits, which we are intending to use, can be safe up until minus 20 degrees. And so I think we're well in keeping.
Okay, thank you. With that, let's call the question then on the motion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjournment. Okay, we're now adjourned, and in just a minute, we'll call the finance meeting to order. Okay, so I'll call the finance committee meeting to order. May I have a motion on the minutes? Moved and seconded. Discussion. All those in favor? Any opposed? That's carried. So then we have the various budgets, starting with the operating capital for the public library. Susan, do you have anything further to add to your report?
I have nothing further to add to my report, but I would be happy to answer any questions.
All right. So it's moved and it's seconded. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much, Mayor Brody. Thanks for the report, and I'm really pleased to see that we're getting the enhancement fund of $628,000 for 2 years in a row. That's fabulous. What I'm wondering about is the $75,000 that's left over from this year to next year, that's going to be used for rebranding the library. What is the purpose and the goal of that?
So that, through the chair to Councillor Day, that funding is from surplus funding, and the board has designated it for a rebranding of the public library. So it's been a long time since we've looked at our logo, and that was a project that we weren't able to complete in 2023, so it's being pushed to 2024 after the completion of our strategic planning process in April.
And what is the goal? Like, why are we rebranding? There must be a reason.
Yeah, so through the chair to Councillor Day, it's to look at our identity and to revisit our logo, our messaging, and just who we are as a library. Lots of things have changed over the last 25 years since that logo was first developed, and it's almost retro now as a pixelated book, but it is something that we want to take a look at. So that money that was set aside for it is the maximum that we would spend, and it might be substantially less, at which point the surplus funding from that project would go back into our surplus funds.
Do you think that one of the ultimate goals will be to inform the public that the libraries have become gathering places as much as being a place to get books?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor Day, that will definitely be part of our strategic planning process. So public consultation is scheduled to take place at the end of January through February, and that will be a lot of the messaging that is going out to community and gathering their input about the library that they want to see moving forward as well.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor McNulty?
Yeah, thank you very much. Just a quick question on the regard to the municipal contribution per capita. When was the last time that we have either raised it or when it was implemented? Have we raised it in recent years?
Through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we continue to ask for increases on an annual basis, but as far as per capita expenditure, I don't know that we've looked at that, but we do ask for increases every year to cover our increasing operating costs as our business changes. So I would have to take a look at that and get back to you.
I'm just wondering, Your Worship, through you, if we can maybe get a memo just of contributions made, let's say, over the last 20 years municipally, and also maybe some comparative to some of the other libraries. Because I know we're ranked very high in terms of operational and efficiencies and innovation throughout the country and have won many, many awards. But I think that would warrant some looking at in the future. It might be something that council might want to look at in the future as our library services expand, and especially when we're looking at I'm hoping, an extremely modern library in Steveston in 4 years. Okay, thank you.
Yeah, we note that there is about, $500,000 increase this year in the city contribution. All right, so if we can hear a little bit more about what they've been over the years and per capita type of situation.
I'd be happy
All right,
to
we'll
bring
call
that
the
back.
question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Now we'll go to the proposed operating budget, and as staff gets organized here, and we'll go through it, and I'm sure there'll be questions. What I propose to do is what I've done in the past, is we'll put the entire budget as recommended on the floor. Any councillor can suggest an amendment or a deletion or a change to that. But then at the end of the day, this is the package that is the budget, so we won't split it up further than that. We'll just have one vote on the entire budget. So, yes, Mrs. Lusk.
Good afternoon, and I'll certainly be brief. Staff have prepared the proposed budget before you diligently and with a focus on continuing to serve the community while meeting Council's long-term financial management strategy. While we wish that the number could be lower, and certainly I wish that, and we are very cognizant of the effect increased taxes can have on our community, the city does face many external financial and social pressures, and we must address those through this budget. We do know that Council's sound financial management strategy, because of Council's sound financial management strategy, the proposed budget is one of the lowest in the region in terms of percentage increases and in terms of actual dollar amounts. And we are pleased to be in the position for this to be the case. I'll let our CFO, Jerry Tong, and his finance team and our broader staff team who are here this afternoon answer your specific questions. Thank you very much.
All right, maybe we could have the finance team come forward. And if you have any introductory remarks, and then we'll get into specific discussions from the councilors.
Mayor Brody, we have nothing further to add at this time, but we're here to answer any questions that council may have.
Okay, so we'll go to Councillor Day.
Yeah, thank you very much. I see that the tax increase is 5.62% in general. Do we know what the utility bill tax increase is likely to be at this time? Like for water, sewer? Is that
Yeah, we
separate?
passed it.
Like the separate water bill?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the utility budget was passed in November.
Oh, right you are. I apologize. I was thinking about next year, but we've already done next year, last year. My second question, hopefully be a little bit less lame. So I see on Fin 20 that once again, we're designating 1% for transfer to reserves. What is the balance of that account, and what would this be designed to go for?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, the the current balance is 77 million in the capital building infrastructure reserve. The intent for that reserve is to fund community amenities or community facilities. One of the big ones that we're proposing in the capital budget that'll be upcoming is the Works Yard. And one of the rationale for one of the premises to continue with the 1% is not only to fund the Works Yard, but other facilities that council have endorsed in previous reports.
Okay, so it's going to specifically be in community facilities. It won't just be in a general account.
That's correct.
Okay, I can live with that. Thank you.
Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. I just want to make a comment. Of all the budgets I've read from other local governments, even the provincial government, I got to tell you, this is one of the better ones. My hat's off to you on an absolutely outstanding job in putting this together and understanding it. Even when I had a few questions on the weekend, Jerry, you were there to help me understand it a little more. So I can tell you generally, I think this is fantastic. I have no problem with the 5.62%. It's $116 per average household, which in my opinion, and as the CAO said, is most likely going to be the lowest in the region. We should be very, very proud of that, and I'm very proud of our staff for putting it together. My questions are going to be related specifically to an area that I have some knowledge of, and that's with the policing part of it. We understand that 39 cents, so 39% of our budget's going to go through for police and fire, correct? My comment is, and we've been working on the ECOM cost drivers, and Jerry, you've been very good in working with them also and understanding it. We do have 90 million from the province to deal with the new generation 911 coming in, which is going to be helpful. Hopefully the province does come through with some additional funds. We're on the hook for an increase of 1.2 million, I believe, this year with ECOM. And Mayor, I made a commitment last year that I was going to try and mitigate this as much as we can. I think working with you, we've mitigated it as much as we can. Does the 1.2 come in with the 39%?
You're looking at, I believe you're looking at the attachment where we break down the dollar per day on the increases. On attachment 4, and that amount does include the ECOM increase.
And can I just ask one for interest's sake only? It's no bearing on where I'm going on this is, where are we, for example, with the City of Vancouver, City of Burnaby, on what we spend for our fire and police services?
Through your worship to Councillor Heed, I've looked at the Vancouver one before, and their presentation is a bit different than ours because when they do the same chart, they include the utility budget. So then their denominator base is higher, which gives them a lower amount for policing and fire.
And
So
as
it's not apples to apples is what I'm saying.
As indicated, we're looking at our utilities a little different here in Richmond. So and this will be my final area that I want to cover. And it relates to the public safety mobile command vehicle. And on the weekend, you and I went back and forth on this a bit, and the chief is here. So I'd like his comments on this because having put together one of these command vehicles when we were dealing with the white powder scares in Richmond.
Excuse me, Councillor, I think that's on the one-time list. That'll be the next report.
Okay, thank you. That's it, thank you.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair. Well, we didn't compare notes, but it's going to sound like it because with all the things happening in the world, slowing GDP, inflation, rising interest rates, when I opened this package and read it, I was really pleasantly surprised. I agree completely. This is a really well put together budget report. Again, because this is the third one I've looked at. And I think it's clear, it's concise, it's easy to read, and it's prudent. And I really like the way that staff, senior management, finance staff, all staff that participate, have used different reserves to lessen the burden on the Richmond taxpayer, whether it's the capital building infrastructure reserve or whether it's the revolving fund, it all comes into play. And I think that's quite brilliant. And I think, you know, it's fair to say that previous councils and previous staff deserve some credit for putting together the policies that have allowed this budget to appear as it does today. When you look at it, just, you know, for somebody who might be listening in the public, you know, such a big chunk of it is taken up by achieving the same level of service, 3.1% out of that. And another big chunk is taken up by things that we have no control over, which is essentially senior levels of government and what we're required to spend in order to meet those requirements. So that's about 4.3 or 4.32% or something out of the total. So there's some things that are beyond our control, and nobody wants to see any budget cuts or any cuts to our level of service. So I'm really good with the 3.1. One question I would like to ask you about that is just if you could explain a little bit in terms that we'll all understand, or at least that I will, is how do you achieve that analysis of maintaining the same level of service? Like, what's the efficiency analysis? Maybe just very briefly, so we have some kind of understanding. And what might be really helpful is maybe providing an example of how you do that. Because it is important. Nobody wants to see a cut. And so the 3.1 is the basis of the whole thing.
Through your worship to Councillor Hobbs, previously, pre-pandemic, the city did have conduct a service level review. It was done over 6 years and evaluated over 80 departments and looking at different services. And based on that, we established a baseline on the levels of service. Through those reviews, through the senior management team, they looked at, you know, where areas where we could do cost containment efficiencies and whether that meant deploying it in different areas. But that was done in all aspects to ensure that the additional burden wasn't passed on to the taxpayer and was done within. I can give you some examples through technology, whether it was the like recent things like My Permits, the business license. I know with Public Works, they have digital inspections, the brining versus salt. And then one of the other ones that through the pandemic was hybrid work that realized savings. So the city, through senior management and the city, we always work around and look for efficiencies to ensure that we do deliver the same level of service. And that's why the additional expenditure requests, the additional levels, are at the level that we keep it. We try to keep that at a low amount.
Well, I appreciate that. And I just think it's important to state that it's just not a thing that happens every year. Oh, same level of service, boom, same level of service, boom, adding on, you know, the cost of inflation, basically, that we do review it, we do go through it, and we make sure that we're delivering services effectively while maintaining the same level, and then building where we have to, which council has decided to do that in a couple places. I have one question, and that relates to attachment 10, number 5 on attachment 10. And I'll put it out here for now, and perhaps the chair will come back to me on it. The $270,000 that we got from UBCM for basically the Brig House warming shelter, I think it is. I forget what page it's on, but it's attachment 10. That funding was kind of one time, and it expires at the end of this year. Now, we have it in the budget for $270,000. My point is this. In my mind, in my opinion, it's another example of downloading from another level of government. And when the program came in, we knew it was going to end. But if we put it into our budget right off the bat, then it's going to be basically a perennial part of our budget. And while it's not a huge amount of money, it's still a lot of money. And so my question for other councillors to think about is, you know, whether that would be probably or perhaps better put in the one-time expenditure. And then this year, we can go back to the province and see if we can secure more funding for that, because it is a provincial responsibility, and they're the ones that started off with giving us this funding, which was not sustainable.
Through the mayor to Councillor Hobbs, council could keep it in the base and then maybe have staff look at ways of communicating with the province. And if we do get funding, it's something we can revisit in the future.
Okay, sure. I mean, I'll hear if anybody else raises that point, because the point is, you know, it's being incorporated into our budget as a perennial piece, perhaps, and I think that the province should actually be coming up with the funding for that, because it's a worthwhile program, and they started it. But thank you for that. I'll just end with this. It is a really good report. I really appreciate all the work that went into it, and I agree. I think 5.62 could very well be one of the lowest ones in the Metro Vancouver area. So thank you for all the work you put into it.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you very much, Your Worship. I'll try to have a little different approach, although I agree with the two previous speakers on their comments. And I appreciate the budget and the work that you've done, and I think you've done a yeoman's task, an admirable job. It's always difficult, and yeah, this is a budget that in very, very difficult times, and there are difficult times in Canada and the world right now. We have to face it. So I can't really see any councillor wanting to vote against a budget when we have all the good things. Just looking on page 68 to 74 about our community and how much of a whole community we are and a complete community, and how we are a passionate community and included community of all the things that we have done and are doing. And many of those things are not our responsibility, and we're still holding our own. So it's kudos to staff with efficiencies, and it's also kudos to us. So I hope, Your Worship, everybody, I'll be supporting the budget. I can't see anybody not supporting it at this time if we want to have the good community that we have in Richmond. I just have a couple of questions with regard to growth. Were we, if I may, and a couple more comments to staff, are we conservative in our growth projections? Because I'm a little concerned next year or the year after if property values should come down. And because we base it on property values, we may have fewer dollars next year and the year after, and taking on more debt, not more debt from the other levels of government. So are we conservative?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, we are very conservative with the overall budget. So there are some years where we don't achieve the growth because it's always an estimate. However, we do balance the budget at the end. So we're quite comfortable that we'll.
Well, that's good to hear, and I think people need to hear that. As my colleagues mentioned here, safety is paramount. You know, we're spending 39 cents and change, and you know, we could, if I put it in a commodity, you can't buy that service anywhere. It's second to none, and it's the greatest value that we can have, and safety is number one in the community. It's my number one priority as well. Your Worship, somewhere along the line, I'd like to see us adding a couple of police officers each year as we grow, so that we never fall behind in our complement of RCMP. And we did it, if you remember, Your Worship, we were part of it 4 years ago when we took the bold step to, and people wondered where I was coming from when I said we're going to have 36 new fire rescue people. We got them, we're safe, we're ahead, etc. And we need to think in that way, and the same with the RCMP. Whether it's palatable this year or not, I think we've got to have that in mind where we're going. And it's not that our crime is high in the city of Richmond. It's relatively low crime for the, but look around us to our other communities, and we need to protect ourselves. So I'm looking up that. I do want to make a comment. It was made, we picked up a lot of download from the federal and provincial government, Your Worship, and that we're not responsible for, but because we have compassion in the community, we've picked it up and we are running with it, and we have some great programs. The average raise is $116, Your Worship, and I want to make a point. You start off and we're looking at number one, it's 5.62. But actually, the tax increase is 4.62. And because we're responsible and we're looking out for the future and we're building good things and we're still building construction, new community centers, new libraries, it's the 1% that we've added to be responsible. We had that, Your Worship, if you recall, back in 1996, we started to add the 1% to it when you were on council. And it's the best thing we've ever done because now we can do it. We have no debt or limited debt. We're able to spend as we go. We're self-financing in many things. We're building a community center at 1.6% interest on our money as opposed to 8, 9, 10 at the bank. And because we stuck our neck out for there's only one taxpayer. Doesn't matter what level you're at. And I think we've worked hard to get that and respect the taxpayer. So I have no problem supporting it. I don't know whether others feel the same with the RCMP and if you look on that sheet, if I can, Your Worship, where all the breakdown is, the bricks and mortar that we're doing is a relatively small amount. You know, rounded up to 40%. I think Councillor Heed mentioned, and Councillor Hobbs, it's 40% of the budget is community safety. And that's just with the two aspects, but there are other aspects of safety as well that are in there that are hidden. So I'm going to support the budget as it is, and hopefully we can look to increasing our complement of officers as we go along. Thank you.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just 3 or so questions to staff. The first one is about Hamilton Area Plan Community Amenity Capital Reserve Fund. So that reserve fund didn't show up in the table of reserves on page 68. So I assume there's other reserve funds maybe that aren't included here that are just not being utilized in this year's budget. And just to further on that, there was a couple items on the agenda or in the whole package here that included Hamilton, and I was just wondering why the reserve fund couldn't be used for things such as the community center infrastructure renewal, which has been pushed a few years down the road, and also the McLean Park Shade Shelter structure, which is not in this year's capital budget. Yeah.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, I think those questions might be best served for the capital budget.
Okay.
That's
I can
coming
bring
up.
them back then. So they wouldn't fit into this reserve table then. I'll ask that a little bit later. The next one I have is on page 75, it's the no tax impact positions. And the third one is the senior climate action specialist. That's 2 positions. Working on existing buildings and zero emissions vehicles. I know if approved, then we're going to go out to seek these applicants. But I'm a little bit concerned about job security with that because the province is funding the 3 years. How can we confirm that the positions will go beyond that, or will it come back to a budget process like this in 2026?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, as we talked about efficiencies, if we find that a program is serving us well, we'll try to find it through other efficiencies, or we'll bring it back through the budget if we can't find efficiencies as an additional level to keep that program going.
Okay, yeah, but we don't give anybody a guarantee that once they get hired, they've got a job for life. I mean, it's always subject to review and to the efficiencies of the situation.
Your worship, that's correct. Some of these positions are also dependent on revenues, and as you've seen in the past, when revenues do drop, we then go through the positions or areas to see where, if it was a revenue-funded position, then we have to make some decisions.
Okay, great. Yeah, I can see retrofitting will be needed much beyond 2025, but we'll get there. Okay. The next item, kind of related to my last kind of 2 questions, is on page 76. 7. It's one of the emerging organizational additional levels, recommendations for funding. Item number 4 there is 2 outreach workers. We've received presentations from delegates, many letters. I'm sure we've heard through other means that is in demand. Outreach workers are very valuable, and nowhere in this job description does it highlight the after-hours component to that job. So could staff just comment on the work schedule, that this isn't just like 2 9-to-5 positions?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, staff are currently developing the job profile for this position, so we will be evaluating what the hours of work will be and what the demands are. We are aware that there are limited hours for outreach workers on the weekend, so that is something we'll be looking at as well. But we will be also looking at how these outreach workers could connect with other service providers within the community as well. So we're going to look at the demands of the role and where connections need to be.
Great. A couple of follow-ups then. So first, you did mention weekends, but what about nights? Is that going to be
I think we're
contemplatable?
getting to a level of management that is not called for here. We're being asked to adopt this in concept.
Well, this relates to what I might do as an amendment then. So I do kind of want that answer, if it would involve after hours
Well,
time.
Through
Give
your
the answer
worship.
you can.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, as mentioned, staff are looking at the positions and we'll be building those positions out based on the need in the community and demands of the role.
Great, thank you for that. Then I'll just go straight to what I'd like to suggest as amendment. I don't know if I can do it now.
No.
No? Okay, we'll come back to me.
There's no motion on the floor. We can come back to you. Councillor Galanders.
Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship. I echo many comments. It's an excellent budget, really easy to understand, very well laid out. I've got a couple of questions through the chair. First of all is the external government costs that we don't have any control over. Those WorkSafe BC rate increases, it's such a huge chunk of it, the 46%, almost 0.5%. I'm just wondering, so it says that they've increased due to collective industry classification being changed. Is anybody appealing that or working on that? Because is it involving our specific safety rating and our specific classification? And
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, the WorkSafe, it's not, some of the areas are not within our control because we're classified within other local governments.
yeah.
It's a certain class, so even though we strive for improvements, we have our own WorkSafe committee, internal committee, looking at improvements and how we can gain some efficiencies. However, there's a lot of non-controllable factors because other communities or other cities might not be as diligent as we are.
So it is a collective based on all the municipalities.
That's correct.
And as far as you know, there's nobody working on that on the metro level or anything appealing to WorkSafe for the classification change.
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, not at this moment, that it's not there hasn't been any sharing on that. So we're working on it internally right now.
Okay. And then about the rate stabilization account, so that was established in 2013. Can you just refresh my memory? Does it go up and down, or has it just been steadily going down every year since then? Like it's going to be almost, because we're using 25% of what's remaining, and then, so is it going to be gone in the next 2 years, or?
Through your worship to Councillor Galanders, any operating surplus is transferred to the rate stabilization account. So fortunately, over the last couple of years, there has been surplus put in there. And from time to time, we do use it for a one-time funding. We do certainly use it. It was initially set up to bring down the tax rates for fluctuations in that. And we're pretty conservative with the use, so I think we're confident that it'll be continue to be used as a funding source.
Okay, yeah, because I was thinking things, yes, it's a rate increase, but it's so reasonable considering what's going on in the country and with everything else that I wonder about not even using that much of it this time around, but if you think it's going to keep going up and down. One more, just a couple more questions. On FIN 52 about the office space vacancy, what effect does the increase of office space vacancy have on our budget? Is it mostly just they were not getting the business license revenue that we're expecting?
Through your worship to Councillor Landers, I know our business license has been quite steady, so it hasn't been a material impact through the office vacancy.
So why is it in here then? Like what's the point of it? Like why do we need to know about the vacancy rates in this context? How is it helpful?
Through your worship to Councillor Landers, all this information, the stats, whether it's industrial, office, it kind of gives you a snapshot of the local economy, where we are, and with things such as business license, the YVR, cargo, the port, all that. It's just additional information.
Oh yeah. So that's sort of what I meant, is that if the offices were full, then we'd have even more business license revenue and we'd have more jobs and more things happening in the economy. So it's just sort of a picture for that. That makes sense. Okay, thank you. I think that's it for me. Thank you.
Councillor Al.
Thank you to staff for the very good report, easy to read, and I think the figures are well presented. I've talked to some people who are interested in our budget over the weekend, and I think there are some questions being raised. The first one is on FIN 32 about the tax growth. Now, can staff explain further why the estimated growth is only $3.5 million? Is it underestimated? Because people say, we have more units of houses being built, and also the fees and other economic activities is growing. So $3.5 million seems to be a small amount. So can staff elaborate on that?
Through the chair to Councillor Au. The 3.5 is a conservative estimate. This is based on the preview roll that's provided to us by BC Assessment. So we always true it up the following year. The projection for in fact, for 2024 is much less than 3.5 million. However, for 2023, we actually gained a few $100,000, so that's why we bumped it up to 3.5 million. So it is a very conservative estimate, and that's basically what the market is dictating at this point.
So in other words, what could happen is that at the end of 2024, actually we got more tax dollars than estimated.
Through the chair to Councillor Au, 2023, at the end of 2023 to 2024, we don't know the tax growth, simply an estimate at this point.
Okay, good, thank you. Now, the other question being raised is about this rate stabilization fund, which is on FIN 38. So at this point, do we know what would be the estimated surplus for 2023? I know that, our financial year is not finished, but what is the outlook right now?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, we roughly estimate $6 million in surplus.
And is it within the normal range?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, it all depends on an annual basis. Like if you recall, there's some years where in the 08 year, if you recall that, we entered the recession and we didn't have any surplus, right? So it all depends.
Okay, so this could be one of the better years.
Well, it's on many factors, whether it's whether there was times where we just didn't get to doing some of the programs that we tried to achieve. There's also vacancies in that, so it's always dependent on whether permit revenue comes in. It's always dependent on different things.
Okay. And further, another question is that on the same page, FIN 38, so in 2023, actually we used $1.7 million out of the rate stabilization fund to reduce the tax increase. And what staff recommend right now for 2024 is to use 1.6 million. So again, what is the base for the recommendation? Why not 1.8? Why not 2 million?
Through your worship to Councillor, when we built the budget, we brought it at a 1% amount, just to bring it down, using that as the rate stabilization. We then looked at the figure and said that amount is, because then every year when you bring in the rate stabilization, the following year it comes back into the tax base. So we didn't want to bring in too much, because then the next year, you're going to have to offset that deferral of tax. So that's why the amount we chose was based on the percent.
Okay, good. The final point I want to make is that, okay, on the table, in the table on the 30, so staff said that balance after proposed 2024 utilization is $13 million, but given that our estimated surplus is 6 million. So at the end, we have more than we start off. So we would have $19 million instead of 13 at the end, and which is more than what we have at the end of 2023.
Through your worship to Councillor Al, that is correct. We could project it if things hold true to year end. You could have more. However, we do know that there are some big things coming up in the future, whether it's Steveston Community Center, the Works Yard, other capital things. So it's always best to have some money set aside for the future.
Yeah, what I'm trying to say is that perhaps there's some room for us to consider using more from the stabilization fund to offset the tax increase in 2024.
As I said before, the more you bring in this year, the more it's built into your tax increase the following year.
Okay, good.
So
Thank
we're
you.
always cognizant of that.
Okay, Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship, and thank you for this budget. It was really well put together and easy to understand, easy to read. I liked how you condensed the economic information so that we could get a general feel for the economics of what's going on in Canada and BC and in Richmond, and also to not be overwhelmed by the amount of it, the sheer amount of it. I agree with many of the things said by my colleagues already. I think we need to continue doing the 1% to reserves. I appreciate that we've been doing this in the past, and I appreciate that we should continue doing it in the future. I know that we recently approved the Phoenix Net Loft and that process that we should move forward with, and that looks like a big number. And then instead of having to borrow against it or anything else, we know that we want that. We know that that's an extra thing that we've decided we want, and we want it sooner than later. And so saving up the 1% helps us get there sooner than later. I had a question on, and sorry to make you flip pages around, on Fin 65, it shows the revenues for planning and development going up by about 65%. So I'm wondering if a big chunk of that relates to some grant money that we received. Is that correct?
Yes, through your worship to Councillor Liu, that relates to the Rapid Housing Initiative, largely.
Okay,
that
so,
grant funding.
so through that initiative, we're able to hire some more planning staff that'll help speed up some processing and that sort of thing.
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, this is largely just for municipal contributions to build housing, the rapid housing.
Okay.
It's on Fin 72. So it is to build 25 units of affordable rental housing.
Okay, but so that's coming through the operating budget, though?
It's funded through this external grant, and it is.
Okay, so the way the grant's set up is it flows through here?
That's correct.
Okay, because sometimes I think it's hard for everyone to keep the operating and capital separate. So that is primarily for the project down on Steveston and Railway?
That's correct.
Okay, thank you. I was wondering where we're getting all this extra money from, but. And The other question was about the storm drain utility, the 1.8 million. So is that essentially money that we're getting during the utility budget phase? So when people pay their utility budget in February, they're paying a portion into that utility? And DCCs, like, is there a combination of those two things, or am I confused on this?
Through your worship to Councillor Liu, previously the storm drainage budget was funded through the operating budget. Starting this year, we have now completely funded it through the utility, the flood protection utility. So this funding is no longer going to be collected within the operating budget.
Okay. But it's still collected from
Correct.
the taxpayer at the end of the day?
Collected on the utility side.
Okay. Thank you. And so our total budget's $269 million, which is pretty tight compared to, I think, a lot of other municipalities. I think we're doing really well. Anyway, thank you for this, and I'll be supporting it.
Oops. Okay, I suggest we get a motion on the floor then as recommended.
Second.
So that's moved and seconded. So first of all, we'll go to Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to have Council consider an emerging organizational additional level that's not recommended for funding. You can see
Where?
on page 78. 78, FIN 78. And the number 2 and number 3 are both part of the planning and development request, which if the page before, sounding like around the table that there's support for the 2 outreach workers from planning and development. So I have a question to staff first before I officially determine which one I want to put forward here. So the question is knowing that these ones were not recommended, so went through the general managers and these ones were not given the priority of the significance. I just question that number 2, the community social development planners, there's 2 of them. Did we also consider just having 1 hired as opposed to 2, because then 2 come with that much higher cost? And my second part to that question is the social development leader, if we are to have these 2 new outreach workers, how will the social development leader's role fit into that?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, in terms of your first question with regards to the planner ones, so we have been funding through gap funding those planner 1 positions on an auxiliary basis. So this is looking at making those positions regular full-time. Those positions are supporting our senior planners in the areas that are growing, such as poverty, homelessness, equity, number of areas within social development. In terms of your second questions regarding the social development leader, again, that has been an auxiliary position in the past, and that position is supporting our senior team in community social development with the demands that are happening within the department and across the city in terms of social issues.
So just to follow up then, was staff considering just hiring 1 community social development planner? Was that even a consideration, or was it only bundled as the 2?
We already have 2 of them. They are auxiliaries.
Correct.
So you're not changing anything other than you're making the auxiliaries full-time permanent employees. That's what you're doing. You're not actually changing the staff. Am I correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
Well, I would like us to change the staff and add 1 on a permanent basis. And I'm still a little bit hesitant which one it should be, 1 more planner 1, or this social development leader, which is a unique position and would only impact the budget by 0.03. So without staff being able to comment right now on which one I'll put on the floor, that we add the social development leader.
Where are you getting the money for those positions right now?
Through your worship, we've had some gap funding with position vacancies that we've been able to support those positions across the division.
And you feel you're going to be able to do that as an ongoing basis?
Through your worship, we anticipate to be filling positions, so there will be a need for positions.
All right. All right, so what's your amendment? You want to
Add a social development leader position impacting the budget by 0.03, taking it to 5.65.
So add number 3.
Yes.
All right, is that seconded? All right, I'm going to call the question then on the motion. Okay, go ahead. This is on the amendment.
Thank you. Just on the amendment, the two outreach workers that are on item 4 here, these were in the not recommended last year when Councillor Day had them added to the thing, was that right? And then, so now they're here and they're going to be permanent or still auxiliary? The ones on
Just a minute.
77, the two outreach workers?
We're on page 78.
Yes, I know. But yeah, and then
The planner and the
yes,
and the
and then
leader.
recently, like in the last month, we did a referral to staff to hire an additional outreach worker.
And that's on the
full-time.
previous page for 2 RFTs, outreach workers, number 4.
So that's a result of that referral that we did a month ago?
I don't know whether.
Or is it from last year?
It just is.
I just want to make sure it's not two different things.
Through your worship to Councillor Jalanders, the 2 outreach positions were not brought forward in last year's budget, so just to clarify.
Okay.
In terms of these 2 positions, there is a need that we feel to help support our bylaws department in terms of responding to homelessness, and that is those 2 positions that are being brought forward. In terms of the referral that you brought or you have given staff, we will be responding to that in December, and that will also supplement information that you have here today.
Yeah, so that's what I mean, is if it comes back, the referral comes back and they recommend that we hire an additional person, but now we've already done what Councillor Wolf is suggesting in the amendment, then would that not affect that referral?
Through your worship to
Mr.
Councillor.
Erceg.
When we bring that referral back, if we feel that there is staffing need over and above what you have in the budget today, we would advise you at that time. And regarding the auxiliaries, I think you asked what's the intention. The intention would be to continue funding them through 2024, provided that we have funds available, say, as a result of vacancy. But we're not in a position where we could guarantee that, but the intention would be to continue funding them. And in all probability, we would bring one or some of those positions forward for the 2025 budget. But of course, that has to be evaluated by the senior team in the context of all of the needs, at that time.
All right. All right, Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'm trying to get my head around this. I'm not opposed to hiring more staff and putting them on, but if they're already working, I guess I have a bigger concern about what we put in the budget with the outreach workers. I'm hoping that the outreach workers are going to be working in the evenings and the weekends and what have you, but until we see that, I think.
We're on the amendment.
Okay, well, I have difficulty supporting the amendment until I see the whole picture of how we're going to deal with it. I don't want us to shoot ourselves in the foot by not providing what we really, really want. It's 0.11. Yes, it's significant. 0.11 is basically $350,000 by putting it in there. But to be quite frank with you, if I had my live, I'd add another outreach worker to work on weekends and what have you. So that's where I'm having trouble, Your Worship, supporting the referral. At the moment, I think in a way, from my perspective, it's premature until I can get more information. I sympathize with Councillor Wolf for what he's intending to do, but I hear from staff we're already funding these positions and they're going to go on for another year. We haven't got any basis for job descriptions of things, so I'm in a bit of a quandary, Your Worship, to support it.
Well,
I need further clarification.
Yes, you do, because the motion to amend is only for number 3, which is the social development leader That's 0.303%. This is a position that has we already have an auxiliary person in that position. So with that, I'm going to call Counselor Day, and then we're going to call the question.
Yeah, I'm going to be supporting the motion because it's pretty obvious, just drive around the city, that this is something we need today, not next year, not the year after, but today. So I'll be supporting it.
I have to say, I don't know what you say you see when you drive around the city. We're talking about, no, I have the floor. We're talking about a social development leader. And I don't know how you drive around the city and you miss a social development leader, especially one that is already on staff as an auxiliary. So I'm going to call the question. All those in favor? Those opposed? So that is defeated with Councillors Au, McNulty, Liu, Hobbs, Heed, and the mayor opposed. All right. Any other comments, amendments? Oh, Councillor Hobbs, did you have an amendment? Go ahead.
Through you, Your Worship, no, I've changed my mind. I think Mr. Chong's explanation of how staff are going to approach it suits me fine, so thank you very much.
Okay, doke. Then what I'm going to do is I'm going to call the question on the budget. All those in favor? Those opposed? That is carried. Great job, staff. Well done. Okay, let's go to one-time expenditures. Comments, we'll turn your mics back on. Go ahead. Any comments?
Nothing further to add, Your Worship. We're here to answer any questions. And
so these one-time items, they come from rate stabilization.
That's correct.
So from previous surpluses, it gives us the money to do this on a one-time basis.
Yes.
Okay, Councillor Heed.
Thank you, Mayor. I did have some conversation on the weekend with respect to this. And I guess where I'm going is, yes, I understand the need for the Public Safety Mobile Command and Communication Center vehicle. I like the idea that we're going to utilize it for both police and fire, albeit police will have control of this. And my question is with regard to the subsidy we get with retaining the RCMP as our police of jurisdiction and equipment that's purchased, and that leads to the 10% that we usually get back on this, Mayor. And I looking for clarification whether it can come from the chief or not on why that 10% subsidy, since it's going to be under control of the RCMP, would not apply for this capital expenditure.
Through the chair to Councillor Heed, any expenditure from the RCMP that's over $100,000 will have to come to council for approval first. And because the conception of this vehicle is not for the exclusive use of the RCMP, we are outfitting it with communication and other needs from other areas as well. So the idea was to have it under the control of the city as opposed to the RCMP. If council's direction is for it to go under the RCMP for the exclusive use, we can look at that as well.
And that's my concern was it would be exclusively used by the RCMP. I think we can utilize this vehicle in a much different fashion than the previous one that Al McIntyre was able to get into Richmond years ago. It sat there and got moss on it. But I think given the fact that we can utilize this at community events, major disaster events, hopefully we never have them, that the fire department has access to it, and of course the RCMP for some significant events. So thank you.
Okay, Councillor Day. Oops. There you go.
Thank you very much. Along those same lines, that was pretty much what I wanted to know. If we're going to spend $1.8 million on this mobile command vehicle, I want to see it out being used like almost daily, because having owned an RV in the past, a motorhome, if you don't use it, you lose it. They need to be moved and used. Can we guarantee that it will be used on a, if not daily, but weekly basis?
Who can comment on that?
We just have so many community events, and it seems to me that we want to be visible. And what could be better than a mobile command truck?
Through the chair to Councillor Day, the purpose of the vehicle is to utilize by different agencies, RCMP, Richmond Fire Rescue, with any other emergency operations, BC Ambulance Services, as well as community events. So whether it's natural disasters to other emergencies or acts of violence, anywhere we can use it, but there's other opportunities, whether it's a salmon festival, Festival of Lights, or any other big community functions are happening. Another big purpose that it'll be really helpful is the presence in the Hamilton area, because we are waiting for the CPO3. I think that's about 2 to 3 years, I think, delay that we are anticipating. That would be huge for us, for the community, to have that presence. So I can assure you that we'll maximize the use, not only just with the RCMP, but with our partners as well.
That's excellent news, and I can see little kids just loving having a little tour of that mobile command unit, so thank you.
Thank you.
Why don't you stay with us for this one? Councilor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, and thanks, IOC, for mentioning the Hamilton area in an office, so to speak. It's very encouraging because it's well overdue and well used. We're focusing on the multi-agency, and that's great, but I guess my question through your worship to staff, is this disaster equipped? And I mean, this has got to be and I'm wondering if there's enough money actually in the budget to do so. A mobile command, if we have an earthquake or whatever, and this is our only vehicle, I hope it is fully equipped with whatever we would need to go. We might ambulance, first aid, whatever it is that's required in there. Is that the case?
Yes, through your chair to Councillor McNulty, the research that we have conducted thus far, it includes all the components that will be required that are necessary for any disaster or emergency operation needs.
And it will have appropriate telecommunications and that kind of thing, because let's face it, we have an earthquake and the bridges go down, we're by ourselves. And this might be the only vehicle. No, I think this is a good move at this time, given the situation. It just makes our community much safer. I look at it as a safety issue. Yes, we can use it for other things. It's going to hopefully help out in the Hamilton area to be safe, but also wherever it goes. So how many will be in terms of staffing on it? Obviously, someone's got to drive it, but how many will be associated with it if, for example, we moved it to Hamilton and we're out there?
To the chair, to Councillor McNulty, I know that Chief Jim Wishlove has very graciously offered to support us in maintaining that vehicle as well. And then when it comes to training and accessibility of the police officers or through RFR or other partners who need to use it or utilize it, we will develop those numbers and make sure that information is available as to who will have the ability to drive that vehicle to different events and different incidents.
Obviously, it's going to require people, because I don't want to see it just sitting there in the garage being, oh, guess what, we've got a vehicle. No, let's utilize it, let's get it out there, and let's do it. To maybe Mr. Chong, is this enough money? I mean, $1.8 million asked is if it's fully equipped, do we have enough money to fully equip it for first-line safety?
Through your worship to Councillor McNulty, the estimate was based on the best guess provided by RCMP and
Okay. Well, I'll support that. The other question, your worship, through you, the recreation fee subsidy program, I thought we had put that in our regular budget. Did we not, are we still getting our hand out for that? I thought, not to the OIC, to Jerry. I mean, I look at the city events program. These are things that we stand up and brag about and want, et cetera. And I thought we put some of these in our budget.
Let's ask Elizabeth Harris about that. Can you help us out on that?
Yeah, through the chair to Councillor McNulty, we've still been using a previously supported fund from council, and we're still working on revising and bringing forward to council a pricing policy, which will allow us to deal with this program in a more final state early in 2024.
Okay, just a final comment, Your Worship, to staff. It's $890 million, that'd be about 0.3 in the texture. I think we should be looking to incorporate some of these things into our budget. We want to see them on an ongoing basis. Thank you.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. My questions also in regards to the same item that's been discussed here, the Public Safety Mobile Command and Communications Center vehicle. Just a first note that today, City of Vancouver unveiled their brand new Rosenbauer RTX pumper truck, which is a fully electric fire truck, which also serves as a command center. So I'd actually like to ask our Green Fleet department staff, how does this vehicle that we're looking at purchasing here fit in with our Green Fleet strategy when it's about the same cost as the fire truck, the fully electric vehicle that Vancouver displayed today?
Oh. Okay.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, with the Green Fleet Action Plan and Strategy, we're continuously evaluating the types of vehicles that would best fit with an operational need to satisfy the GHG reductions. So we do go through a rigorous evaluation process determining the cost of the vehicle and the outcome that we would get from the GHG reductions.
Okay, I'll just leave it at that. I won't be supporting the whole, I don't know if we want to separate that one. I won't support it because it's a large diesel truck. That's going to be polluting the air at these community events where the kids are and for the workers who are going to be in it. So there's electric alternatives out there, and we should be getting our staff to follow the strategy and get that.
Well, when we get it on the floor, I suggest you propose an amendment to delete that item or change it or something. Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair, I wasn't going to really comment on the command vehicle, but I will now, because I've had some involvement as well with them in the past and used them in situations. And there's very definite specifications that come with this kind of vehicle. So I didn't read the report on the specs for the vehicle, but I imagine that electric versus diesel was probably part of the specifications. So if you're out in an isolated scene, for instance, and it's taking 24 hours, it's going to take a long time. It wasn't in the budget last year, so I'll just say I'm very happy to see it in the budget this year. And people have already talked about its multiple uses and being out at events and different things. I fully support it being out as much as possible, and the interagency cooperation I think will be great. So I will support that full-heartedly. The one I wanted to comment, actually, that I was really happy to see in here is the Wharves bylaw enforcement. I think it's number 5. And I think that's really important because just for years, our wharves, through no fault of anybody, have just been kind of not under supervised, but under enforced, I'll say it that way. And I think that there's a risk to the city, there's a reputational risk, there's a risk to individuals, and I think there's a personal risk to people as well as staff. So there's an environmental risk as well when you get derelict boats and things tying up the wharf. So I just think it's fantastic to have that one in there at number 5, and I want to thank everybody for including that. Thank you.
Councillor Au.
Yes, well, I have some questions. Going back to the mobile command vehicle. Now, as mentioned, this has been raised in the past budgets. And in all these years, we said, no, we don't need it for now. So what has changed in terms of circumstances to make it a needed, necessary item this year?
Through the chair to Councillor Au, I'm not familiar with previous submissions for this command vehicle, but this is something that I have identified and working with our partners, especially with Fire Chief and other partners, that this is a vehicle that we can utilize in our community. We can utilize for emergencies, natural disasters, public events, high visibility presence community events. This is something that has been in the works and it has come before you now. It's something that we haven't had. The last one we had procured was back in 1997. It was out of commission in 2013 and then it was out of service in 2015. So it's, sorry, 2018. So it's been a while. We haven't had something like this. Other communities, VPD, New West, they have this type of vehicle that, and I know that it's frequently utilized, and it pays its dividends. So I think it's something important piece of machinery, a tool, an equipment, command center that we can use. It's better to be prepared now than, have a situation that we are encountered with and hoping that, we had those resources or that the ability to respond to the needs, when we have to.
Well, in principle, I don't oppose to the idea of having a mobile command car, right? However, I think we need some more discussion regarding, the whether or not it is fully utilized. I remember that the past command vehicle that we had, I think it was not well used all the time. That's why I think it was being decommissioned. And I think the choice of types of vehicles, right? I think we need to have some discussion about that too. So I'm not prepared to support this particular suggestion, but I would support the idea that we have some more discussion about, the things that have already been raised. Now, I have questions about the non-recommended list. Item 2 and 3 on FIN 85. Now, I'm not technology expert, but my question is, these are not really big figure. These are not big figures, right? And I don't know how critical they are. It seems to me that from what I read, those software is coming to the end of their useful life. So if we don't upgrade or, revise it or whatever, how will it affect our level of service?
Through your worship to Councillor Au, we looked at all the submission requests. We believe these are low risk, and if it's something that we do need to do, because you mentioned the small dollars, we'll find the funds within other budgets to accommodate it.
So what you're saying that this will be?
It's not a priority at this time. However, as staff review these, and if it becomes a priority and it needs to be done, staff will then look for funding within budgets.
Okay, great, yes. What I hate to see is that, because we don't do it this time, and at the end, we get into some risk or, having an impact on the level of service. Yeah, okay, I'm fine with that.
Councillor Liu.
Thank you, Worship. I will be supporting this. I'd also like to make an amendment at the appropriate time. When I first got on council, I heard loud and clear from our emergency services people that our mobile command unit was no longer usable. It was actually an old RV that someone had done some retrofitting on and done their best on. I think it ended up with mold problems and other things, so it ended up being decommissioned. And so that's why it wasn't being used. It wasn't that it wasn't needed to be used, it was that it was an unsafe environment for our staff to be in, to use. And what I understand with this is it will be appropriate, it will stay safe, it'll be easy to clean, it'll do the things it needs to do. Now, does it need to be diesel under the specifications, or could it be electric?
To the chair, to Councillor Liu, we have looked at some different options, and the current proposed option currently is the best one, but we can always look at other options that are available to us and still come up with the final product. But this is a proposal that is put forward based on our current research.
Okay, because I remember a few years ago, there was the clandestine drug lab right next to my house, and police and fire were there for almost a whole week. Now, I can just imagine that if it wasn't running on its own diesel power, we would have then brought in a diesel generator to back it up if it were electric. So I think we'd be right back where we started from for the most part. So, and it was there for a week, right? And I imagine this recent event, the iHit thing at the home in the Steveston, London neighborhood, and some of the other things that happened, the vehicle is going to need to be there for a certain length of time.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor Liu, that is something that was considered compared to a battery option, because there can be events that could be 1 week, 2 weeks, or longer than that. And when you're using that vehicle for that duration, you need to be able to ensure that the power is there. And sometimes that could be a problematic issue, relying strictly on batteries.
Okay. And while in an ideal world, we'd never have to use the thing, but realistically, from the report that I read, it was needed 41 times. So almost every week it was needed for something specific for the actual job, not just for community events and other things, but just for performing the actual job.
Yes, through the chair to Councillor, that's correct, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Just before we go to Councillor Galanders, can you talk about the process for this? I mean, if we pass the budget and this is the one-time, the vehicle is in the one-time request, do you then go out, scope out the possible vehicles, possible equipment, possible approach, electric versus diesel versus something else, or hybrid or something like that, and then bring it back to council?
Through your worship, or to your worship, we would go through the procurement process and then bring back, typically we don't, but in this instance, it sounds like it's something that council would want to see, so we could bring it back.
It does sound like it'd be worthwhile for us to take a look at it. And then you can talk about what you've got in mind and what the options are and how you've handled it and all that sort of thing, just so everybody is at ease over it. Councillor Galanders.
Thank you, Your Worship. And I think you might have covered it with your statement there about being able to bring this one back and bring back some options. I just wouldn't mind seeing the details as far as, you say this option was the best one. And but I mean, some of that, the car sitting there for a week, some of that range anxiety isn't really realistic. I mean, an electric vehicle can sit there and be used for a month or two without actually losing its power, unless it loses it from driving it mostly, not just from its functions. So I wouldn't mind seeing like the stats, just what's available and how long it's expected to last without a charge, just to know that we're getting the best possible vehicle.
That sounds like it's in the offing. All right. So if someone wants to move the recommendation. Moved and seconded. Now, Councillor Liu, I think you were going to propose some kind of an amendment?
Yeah, and I don't know if this is the appropriate place to do it, but this is the fund I want to use for it. So there's an item on FIN 233 that are recommended, but not, so they're coming from their capital budget items. But I wanted to use this fund to put it, if that makes sense.
So okay, just let me ask this question simply. You don't want to use rate stabilization, you want to use something else. What do you want to use?
No, this is the one-time rate stabilization fund.
Right.
Yes, so that's what I want to use. But it's coming, it's an item coming from the capital budget that I want to use for with rate stabilization.
Well, just a minute. We are talking about the one-time, you have a further item
To add.
later on to add to the list? Is that what you're saying?
It would be a one-time expenditure, and we could put it on this one, or we could bring it
Okay,
up
so
later.
what do you want to add to the list?
I want to add the Brighouse Park Baseball Diamond Infield upgrade from
What-
FIN 233 for $520,000.
What page is this?
FIN 233. And unfortunately, it just shows up as a little bitty one-liner at the bottom of the page. The Brighouse Park Baseball Diamond Infield upgrade. So it's been recommended, but there's insufficient funding.
So you want to not only add it to the list, you want it to add to the list now instead of having it in 2025?
Correct, yes. And
Okay, so is there a seconder for that? All right, do you want to comment on it, Counselor?
yes, I think this is a small amount. If I'm correct, it came to Parks and Rec the other day. It was one of the top recommended items. It's the cheapest item off that whole list. It's better for the younger users, so it's right here across the way. It activates the park, so it'll be used they'll be able to use it in the rain, they'll be able to use it on sunny days, because there's already lights there, so it activates the park a little bit more and creates a more community atmosphere in the park, so that it's maybe less amenable for less community activities in the park. I know we have Latrace Field that has turf on it, but it's too big for the younger users, and it's often used by soccer in various times of the year. This would be good for the younger users. There are increasing numbers of baseball players here in Richmond, and I think that they would also be able to share it with softball and men's fast pitch. So if you all recall, we've recently taken away the baseball diamond at Steveston Park, and so many of the men aren't able to participate now because that has been taken away and they haven't really been given another spot. Like I say, it can be used night and day. The grass in the whole field will stay. It's only in the infield. The infield currently is only dirt, and this would just add turf so that it could be well utilized. And it's actually been on the needs assessment since 2011, and I think it'd be good to get this one done. It's a small amount. We have the funding for it, and I think this is an easy win in many ways.
Where is it described in full? Because I'm looking for it, and I haven't found it.
It isn't.
It isn't.
Through your worship, it is a 2025 submission, and that's the reason why there isn't a full description in the 2024 plan.
Can we get one between now and council? Siri thinks we can.
Elizabeth Harris, can you help us out with this?
Through the mayor to Councillor Liu, we could certainly provide a full description by within a couple of days. It is an item that was identified for 2025, but we can provide more information very quickly.
And I think it'd be great to get it done sooner than later.
Okay, it's been described as a small amount, notwithstanding that it's $500,000, and we have no full description of it. My suggestion is we would ask staff for that description. Don't have it as amendment now. Let's get that description from staff, and we can deal with it when we get it to council.
Okay.
Sorry? Okay. All right, so does staff have that? Yes. So we'll get more information on that, the pros and cons and ins and outs. Councillor Wolf.
Thanks. I will just be furthering my previous comment on the Public Safety Mobile Command and Communication Center vehicle. I didn't mention before, yes, it's fully electric. It runs on fully electric power, but it has a backup generator. So you can operate it on full tilt, having everything going for 2+ hours. And when it runs out, that generator can let it go for another 6 hours. And if you need more, you bring more fuel and you put it in the generator tank and
What
you
kind
keep
of a
going.
generator?
The name of it,
No,
it's a
not the
BMW
brand.
Oh.
Is it an electric generator or a diesel generator?
I don't know the exact detail of that, but it's one type of fuel, liquid fuel generator.
So what is your amendment?
I would like to remove this item, number 4.
All right. The motion is to delete number 4. Is there a seconder for that? Okay, we're going to call the motion, the question on that. Oh, Councillor Hobbs, on this amendment?
Yeah, on the
Go
amendment
ahead.
to delete it. Yeah.
Go ahead.
I won't be supporting it. I think the points are good. There are dual operation vehicles where you can have gas and electric. And I think we had an answer from staff that they're going to be looking at that and coming back to us with those specifications. So I don't think it's necessary to take it out because I think that's going to be addressed. Thank you.
Councillor Day.
Yeah, I just want to ask staff a question. So if we approve this today, will we be getting details about this mobile command vehicle prior to actually purchasing it?
They've already said yes to that.
You know, I think I'm okay with waiting till then to either accept or reject. Thank you.
All right. I'm going to call the question on the motion to delete number 4, the command vehicle on the one-time request. All those in favor? Those opposed? It is defeated with everyone except Councilors Wolf and Au opposed. So we're back on the main motion, which is at this point then unchanged. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried with Councilor Wolf opposed. That brings us to the proposed capital budget. Now, there was to be a delegation. Let's see now. Devin Cairns, is he here? Okay, we haven't seen him. So we'll ask staff to tell us what you want about this.
Your worship, staff have nothing further to add, and all the capital project stakeholders are here to answer any specific questions on a project that counts.
Just give us a capsule comment, if you could, just what are the parameters, what are the criteria for something being approved, not approved, deferred, or whatever?
Sure. Your worship, council follows the council policy on the capital approval process. We go through a ranking process, which is based on council priorities, council term goals, and we follow that. We also look at other things such as the funding availability. Some projects that are submitted do not have a dedicated funding source, so then we're limited based on the amount of funding that is available, and the program is scaled back to whatever is available. That has served Richmond well because it does, as Councillor Hobbs mentioned, that there's always funding available for future years because there's always lots of priorities that the city is looking for. However, we can only fund so many things, and we try to balance it with priorities and also making sure that the program or the project can be delivered in the proper amount of time.
Okay, we'll go to questions, and Councillor Day.
Fin 88, of the $208.6 million for proposed capital budget, there's also $10 million in a contingency fund. If it's not used, will it go back to another fund, or?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that contingency is for external grants that we may receive. So we just put it as a placeholder in the budget.
Yeah, so, and I realize that it's, if we get the grants, we don't need the 10 million. That's wonderful. Where will it go if we get the grants? Where will that 10 million go? Will it stay in the fund, or will it go to another silo?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, that is just a setup. If we get the grant, then we can set up the project. So we'll fund any of these projects, and then that'll reduce the amount from the reserve, and the amount will go back to the reserve.
Okay, so it goes back to the reserves
Yes.
if we get the grants?
Yes.
Thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Yeah, thank you, Worship. I'll be supporting this. Again, this is a very good capital budget. It's actually quite aggressive. The $208 million in change is probably one of the largest capital budgets we've had in quite some time. Almost back to City Hall, Your Worship, and I will be supporting it. And I do have an amendment to it as well. I want to put it in. But I appreciate on our page 90 and 91 and what we're doing, our 2024 proposal. I'm very glad to see $11.4 million for parks and park acquisition, et cetera, and development there. This is a budget which we have as pay-as-you-go, but it's making Richmond livable. And this adds to the quality of life in Richmond. This is why this particular capital budget, Your Worship, and what I've looked through it in very, very, very detail, is why people want to come and live in Richmond. Everything from the Burkwell neighborhood park development to Hamilton. And we're doing all kinds of things. We're looking at curling clubs. We're looking at South Arm Community Center, martial arts, Britannia shipyards, et cetera. I mean, it can't get more expansive than that. So extremely good on it. I also know in here, even though it has not been approved yet, I see this pickleball construction, $1.43 million. Okay.
Page, what page?
Oh, it's insufficient funding. Okay, no, that's okay. Leave it. I won't go with that. The issue that Councillor Liu put forward with the $520,000 for the upgrade of Brickhouse Park, I'd like to move that it be added to this capital budget. I think this is the appropriate place for it. It's $520,000. We increase it to 209.3 million dollars, and I think that this is where I think it should go.
And what's the source of funding?
Well, I'm going to ask staff for that, where I can have it, take it from the rate stabilization that was suggested before. And if we have to, we pay it back later. Utilize our resources and be smart, just like we were doing with the Stevenson Community Center.
But Councillor, if we take it from the rate stabilization account, make it a one-time item as suggested by Councillor Liu.
Well, we can make a one-time item, yep.
Okay, well, that's how we resolved that 10 minutes ago is we're going to get more information on it from staff. They're going to tell us much more about it, and we can make that kind of a change when we get to council next week.
Okay, well, I'll give notice of motion. If, to me, it belongs here, Your Worship, in the capital, because it is a capital project.
Well, it can also, I mean, you can add it as a one-time item as well, if
Okay.
that's what we
All right, we'll
choose.
do that Monday.
Councillor Hobbs.
Thanks, and through the chair, I mean, I agree with a lot of the comments that have been made so far. I think it's just important for the public to realize we're talking about a city with about $3.8 billion in infrastructure. So, and it's a very significant budget that we have. I would again like to acknowledge the work staff has done on this. I find it to be again a very well constructed report with lots of information. I really like the way we make use of various reserve funds to offset the costs, or borrowing money for that matter, for other projects. And I'll just say I was really happy to see a couple things in there, and we'll see if it changes at council and adds that in. But the works yard obviously is a big part of the building program. It's about 33.5% of that. So that's a bit of an unusual year, but a big project, very important to the city, very important for our own resiliency. So I'm glad to see that there. I'm also really happy to see the heritage projects that are going ahead at Britannia. Those are important. And with the parks, I was actually quite pleased to see two little parks, actually. And one that didn't make it in the budget last year was Burkeville. So I'm really pleased to see that in there. And the other one that people might forget about a little bit is, I think it's called the Minoru Park. It's the one kind of behind the ice rinks. I've actually had people in the public talk about that. It's heavily used. So it's just, it's really good to see that those are in there. And again, I just want to, and the Boyd Fieldhouse, another excellent one, and the First Nations bunkhouse, or whatever that will be called. That's another really important one to have in there. So those are all on table 3. I again just want to mention, though, it's the policy and the strategy and then the staff work that allows it to happen. And I think the one that I've learned to really appreciate is that long-term financial management strategy. I think that leads so much in terms of what we do in reserve funds, and I think that it is reflected in this report, and I just want to say thank you for putting that together. That's it.
Councillor Wolf.
Thank you, Your Worship. My first question is the repeat question I asked in the inappropriate time about Hamilton, the reserve fund, known as the Hamilton Area Plan Community Amenity Capital Reserve Fund, and why that would not be identified in anywhere in these reports to potentially be used for such things as the McLean Park Shade Shelter structure or the Hamilton Community Center infrastructure renewal, which is set for a few years down the path.
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the Hamilton Area Plan requires rezoning applications to provide cash in lieu, and the OCP had indicated that the priorities was the funds were to be used for a public library, indoor recreation, and the community police office. And the amount in that reserve is currently 3.6, and I believe right now the priority is to get enough funding for those three initiatives.
Okay, thanks. I didn't know that it was locked down for specifically indoor amenity. That's, thanks for clarifying that. My next question is about, the delegate wasn't here, but I think I know one of the questions they were going to ask, which I also want to ask the same question. The Shell Road multi-use pathway was originally set to be built earlier. Now it seems like it's delayed and other ones have kind of taken its place. It is not that long of a path, and there is a lot of already space on the side of Shell Road on the east side of it to connect travelers to River Road so they can get on the Canada Line Bridge or vice versa. So could you comment on where that process went to have it delayed here?
Yeah, absolutely. Through your worship to Councillor Wolf. One of the things that we were fortunate enough to do is get a very large grant for the project that we want to bring forward this year. So that one we want to bring forward in 2024. When we look at the Steveston Overpass. That is supposed to be completed in 2025, and we'd like to, we've moved up a project to connect the new Steveston MUP to that. This one was moved to 2026, mostly because of those reasons, but also partly because there's some land issues that we don't have resolved. I don't think I can talk about it any more than that in open, but that was one of the reasons it was pushed backwards.
Great, appreciate that. Thank you. My next question is in regards to parkland acquisition. Kind of related to that last issue where sometimes we can't do a certain project because of needing to acquire land or permission to use the land in a different way. I was just a bit surprised that we're only in this capital budget only having $4 million for park acquisition, where I recall a number of potential future parks are going to require us to get the land, and we typically are only seeing land prices go up. So to put a higher budget there, we might not spend it. I just thought maybe we would, I expected more for that. Could you comment on?
Through your worship to Councillor Wolf, the parkland acquisition is always dependent on not only the property in question, but also the amount of development costs charges available in the reserve. One of the pieces of property we're looking at is a substantial amount, and at that time when we are closer to finalizing that, we would bring that back to council.
Okay.
And we would look at various funding sources to acquire that.
Okay, thank you. And then just to clarify, there was some comments here recently about Brickhouse baseball or pickleball. We just went through a process and council approved the sports facility needs assessment, which had extra consultation with the community associations. Did we not approve that as the priority list? So then staff, when ready, will bring those projects to us and we approve them then. And that's where we're at. I'm confused why there's some movement in or shifting here, where if we have capital funding, let's throw it at that whole list and get it all done in the prioritized list that we have. So I'm just not sure if I'm not seeing the process as it was laid out a couple weeks ago.
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the sports facility needs assessment was presented to Parks, Recreation and Cultural Services Committee last Monday and is coming forward to council for further consideration next week. Certainly there were a number of priority projects that were identified in that, and three of which have been included on this list. All three of them are on the recommended but insufficient funding list.
Mm-hmm. So then if things go as planned or not as planned as is likely, it'll get approved at council, and then that top of the list was pickleball. So we would likely expect that staff would bring that one to us first, or not necessarily will that top of the item come to us first?
Through the chair to Councillor Wolf, the pickleball courts that are included on that list was the number one priority that was identified. It has been brought forward for review and submission with the 2024 requests. I guess through prioritization processes, it is recommended, but there is insufficient funding.
Okay, great. Then my last, thank you, I don't know more questions on that. Last comment through the chair is under habitat enhancement or ecological enhancement, I'm just seeing, this is my 5th time looking through these budgets and seeing it as not being set as a priority and not in having any funding. So you can look at page 234 for the Richmond Nature Park or the Terra Nova Slough habitat enhancements or trail network enhancements. They're pushed way down the line here. And I know there's going to be major dike work, and that's highlighted on page 229, the drainage and ecological enhancement. So there'll be $150,000 for habitat offsetting in 2025. And so I was a little bit frustrated when this came to us in the package that once again, we're keeping to more of a status quo on invasive species management and actually enhancing before we lose things and cannot return what nature provided in the first place. So let me just get to the point. Staff did call me down a little bit earlier today and did say that we can make recommendations later in 2024 for a potential advanced management strategy for blackberry and habitat banking. So they're working on what that might look like and will potentially come back to us. So although it's not in this budget, which I was really keen for, hopefully it comes before the next budget. Thank you.
Now, as I understand the list of sports facilities, that's to come to council. We haven't gotten there yet, have we?
That's correct, Mayor Brody.
And as I understand that list, it's generally what are the top priorities as opposed to strictly speaking, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4. Isn't that correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so if you, if we have the wherewithal to, and the situation is right to put in number 3, whatever that is, that can be done ahead of what was identified with a number 1 beside it.
Absolutely, that's
Okay.
the approach.
Okay, Councillor Galanders.
Thank you. Yeah, and along those same lines, with regards to the baseball diamond and what Council Wolf brought up, I'm looking at FIN 231. So under parks, so we've got the Minaroo Park Central Amenity Space Concept Design this year for $385. And then we've got Parks Advanced Planning and Design at $800 this year, but it's $400 in subsequent years. We've got $730,000 for the Parks Aging Infrastructure Replacement Program. Parks General Development, we do $500,000 every year, it looks like. And then down a couple, there's the Playground Replacement Program is $600. In other areas on here, we've got specific playgrounds that are getting done. So I'm assuming that the Playground Replacement Program is just contingency for when things come up that get broken or that were unanticipated, that we have money in there to fix them.
To your worship, to Councillor Galanders, thanks for your question. Typically, there are over 60 playgrounds in the city. Most of them are smaller in scale. That's why we have the playground replacement program on an annual basis to look at the age and condition of these playgrounds and replace them as needed. The other aging infrastructure replacement is looking at something else in terms of parks infrastructure. And then your question about some specific playground, usually when they're bigger in scale and in significance, we would require a more dedicated funding sources because of the magnitude. That's why we would have specific submissions and capital programs for these park spaces, such as Minaroo.
Yeah, of course. And so is there a reason why the playground replacement program is at $600 this year, but $500 for the following years? Because there's something you were anticipating?
To your worship, to Councillor Galanders, typically when we are looking at the upcoming year, our analysis is more solid and robust. That's why we would have a clearer picture for what actually is required for the upcoming playground replacement. For years beyond next, we would need further analysis to confirm the value. So the numbers are a little bit different because of that.
Okay. Yeah, so just looking at these numbers, I'm thinking if we did want to add on next week, if we want to make the amendment after we see more information, we already do know that we have the Brighouse infield replacement is number 3 on that priority list for the sports needs assessment, and that we did discuss that if things come up and we're able to do them sooner, we can. It doesn't have to be done in that order, so I understand all that. And if we, but the information, the background on that project is in the minutes from Parks. But, you know, I'm seeing that, is there not possibly room in this Parks section, as opposed to using rate stabilization? Like, we could reduce Parks advanced planning and design down to the 400 that it usually is. There's 400,000 right there. Do we need the Monroe Park Central Amenity Space Concept Design right now? Probably want to get that done, but, you know, or I'm just wondering if there's a little bit of room to squeeze it in. And in the same vein, for 200,000 for trail network enhancements or Richmond Nature Park enhancements, like Councillor Wolf brought up, that there could be some room, since it's a lot of playgrounds, that there's room to do some of this natural restoration work in our parks as well this year, that we wouldn't need to increase the rate stabilization, but could shift some of the numbers around.
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, all those projects you mentioned, it's all dependent on the type of funding. A lot of these projects are funded by DCCs, which might not be eligible for the field.
Oh, I see, yeah, okay. And then just one more question. It's just regarding the, on FIN 233 again, on the unfunded projects. So the Gateway Theatre mechanical and HVAC renewals for 5.5 million, it's a fairly big thing that needs to be done, as well as the Richmond Ice Center mechanical and electrical renewals for 3.7 million. How critical are those two projects to like safe and effective operations of the facilities?
Through the chair to Councillor Galanders, we have assessed the risk and done risk assessments on the mechanical and the components, and there is no risk at this time. So we defer them to further years, and we have advanced the ones that are critical.
So things like how I could comparatively with the Steveston South Arm pool renewals is kind of the same, in that same ballpark, so that one's more important.
That is correct.
It's more critical.
That is correct.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Councillor McNulty.
Just a point of information, Your Worship. At Parks and Rec, the chair will know, we passed a resolution vis-a-vis the sporting facilities, for those of you that tuned in, that all items would be treated equal. There is no priority list, and that was passed. And not only that, we'll be getting a memo showing the raw rankings of each of the items so that we know exactly where they fit in. And I would expect to have that before Monday. Thank you.
Okay, so someone want to move the capital budget? Moved and seconded. Further comments or any amendments on that are being proposed? All right, we'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Thank you, staff. Lulu Island Energy Company, Alan Polstolka. Oh, Peter Russell. Ooh. Anything you want to tell us about, Alan? Or,
nothing to add, Mr. Chair.
Whatever your name is. Moved and seconded. Discussion on that. Councillor Day.
Thank you very much. On page FIN 250, it states that the budget is $2,225,000. I'm just wondering why we're not breaking even with the rates that we're charging, because I mean, the whole idea is they're supposed to be self-sufficient.
Pardon me, through the chair to Councillor Day, could you repeat the question?
Okay, so we have a budget of $2.25 million, and I'm just wondering why we're not breaking even with the charges, the rates that we charge all the people who are on that grid. Like, shouldn't that be covered? No.
Maybe I can answer. Through your worship to Councillor Day, that is the capital budget for Lulu Island.
And again, I understand that, but I mean, we're kind of running the Energy Corps as separate businesses where we're the only shareholder, we own all of it, but shouldn't they be able to cover all of their expenses, including capital costs, through the rates that are charged?
Through your worship to Councillor Day, it is, the rates do capture that through, you can see, well, amortization is captured in there. And also what we've always stated is that any surplus generated by Lulu Island goes into the equity account to fund future capital.
Okay, so good.
So it's
That's-
self-funded.
That's what I'm looking for. Thank you.
Okay. So we've got the motions on the floor. We'll call the question. All those in favor? Any opposed? That is carried. Someone move adjourn. Okay, we're now adjourned. I'll call the closed GP